The Sv705C camera is one of SVBony's newer released astrophotography cameras. Now, its main purpose is in fact planetary cameras, but what we're going to be really focusing on this video is it possible to use this planetary camera for deep space astrophotography on things like galaxies, or should we just stick to planetary with it? We're going to be checking out two different objects, the Whirlpool Galaxy and M106, to see if it's able to pick up the light from these faint galaxies in a fairly short amount of time, how much detail it's able to pull out in regards to resolution when paired with the Sv705 70ED telescope, how it's able to kind of combat with the chromatic aberration from that telescope, and how much exposure time you would need on a half moonlit night to get a good amount of detail on these two different galaxies. So let's check it out. Alright, so using the Sv705C, it is compatible with the SharpCap program, and if you were to use this, you could use it as both a guide camera and as an astro image camera as well. And to get it connected to your SharpCap imaging software, all you have to do is go onto the SVBony website and download the ASCOM drivers that they have on there. Once you have it installed, your SharpCap program should be able to run the SVBony camera as intended. So to connect, it's also pretty simple. All you have to do is go to cameras and it should automatically show up here once you have it plugged into your laptop. You click on there and it'll automatically connect your scope if you have that connected as well, and it will connect your camera to SharpCap and you will start getting the live feed in here. And it's pretty convenient that you have a bunch of these different controls in regards to the exposure time, the exposure speed. It lets the polar alignment be much easier, much quicker to complete, as well as the double star alignment or triple star alignment. It allows you to center on things a lot easier than it generally would. So we're going to give it first a test on Sv706. I'm not sure if I said that right, but it is M106 as is easier said. I do already have it centered, so that was pretty simple to do. You just do the go-to function using SharpCap as well. I'm not using a guide scope actually, just using this camera itself. SharpCap is able to do the dithering process on the mount. Now, I already have M106 centered. If you go to tools, the go-to catalog, you can actually just go ahead and type in the coordinates or the target name as well, hit go to, and it should automatically center using the SharpCap program, using the system that's actually built into the program as well to automatically center. And it has an ability to constantly recenter the target. Perhaps if your polar alignment isn't done perfectly, it'll automatically recenter after a certain amount of pixels, and you can even dither. If you're using the Skywatcher GTI, you can dither without a guide scope, and it works really well. So if you want to get a fairly cheap astro imaging program, astro imaging camera, telescope, and mount, you could use the Skywatcher GTI SVBony 503 70ED. It's a very cheap refractor telescope, which is good quality as well. And you can get the Sv705C deep sky camera, because not only for planetary does it work, but it also works very well if you do astro imaging. I've already gotten a lot of frames for Messier-51, the Whirlpool Galaxy, but let's try to get some frames here now on the M106. Now for that, I'm just going to do a live stack on that as well. I'm just going to kind of move this to the side, and you can already see it's gathering some data. It's been gathering some data over a certain amount of time. One thing I really like about this camera as well is that it is not a cold camera, but it still doesn't show a lot of hot pixels. I haven't really had any kind of issues with it either. It doesn't really have any bad hot pixels, any kind of bad noise. I haven't noticed that either. I know that in here, it looks like that because this is just the first frame, but once you start getting these frames stacked in here, even if you don't take your dark files with this camera, you're still going to end up with a very clean image. And I'll show you that further towards the end of this video. I'm going to do the processing on the Whirlpool Galaxy M106, and potentially I might decide to shoot another target that's somewhat more difficult for this telescope due to the aperture and the focal length, to bring out, see also how much detail it's able to get with the sensor itself, with a specific telescope, and you guys will be able to see for yourself if you think this camera is a good choice for you, depending on your own refractor telescope. All right, so this next galaxy that we're going to look at is actually not in the target catalog here on SharpCap. So I'm going to be using an image, testing out the Goto Image function here on SharpCap as well. And the galaxy is actually called NGC 3718, and it's supposedly very similar to what is known as the Hamburger Galaxy, which is found in the southern hemisphere. Very hard to image from here because it's hardly ever above the horizon. So we're gonna test this out. Just go ahead and press the start button, and it's gonna close the current live stacking and load that image and kind of just move it around to however it needs to be. So as you can see, it says slowing to target. And because this target is past the meridian, it is going to have to do a meridian flip, which is probably why it took just a few seconds here. So it should be almost done, slowing the target. Hopefully we will have it nice and centered. But again, I'm really excited to see if it's actually able to do this one, since I haven't been able to take a picture of the actual Hamburger Galaxy. This one's much smaller, so I'm not sure if the resolution of the camera will be able to pull it out as nicely as I would like it to. But hopefully you should be able to get a fair amount of detail out of it. Also with this telescope and with this focal length, it's not exactly the best target, but this is definitely a good test to see how far you can push this camera in regards to its usage with this specific telescope, the Sv705 Sv503 So just allowing it to get the next live view frame, which should just be a few seconds, and once it's complete, we should be able to center it and get some of the exposure time in. So give me one moment while I kind of move this over here. All right, and I'm just gonna move all of this stuff out of the way, close Chrome so I don't get any more notifications. And as you can see, it is doing a slight recenter. So using the coordinates that were found actually in the picture, I do think is really cool that you can do that, because, you know, with these certain objects that are very dim in the night sky, it's going to be hard to find them in the catalog. So the fact that we can use these previous taken images from other people to get the proper coordinates for your image is actually pretty cool. And you can see it right here as well. So I'm going to leave the exposure settings the same, and I'm going to begin a live stack on this. And again, just see what we can take out with it in regards to detail. See how much exposure time we can get in before about 6 a.m. And we're going to take this in for post-processing as well. I'm going to show you guys the stacked file before post-processing as well. If you guys are interested in seeing that, I'll show that to you. But yes, I'm extremely excited to see what we're going to be able to pull out here. I mean, you can already see some detail showing up, at least just the cores of the galaxy. I'm not expecting to have a lot visible, so I'm just going to kind of move this over. But again, once we are able to get more exposure time, we should be able to have a lot more detail, maybe be able to see the arms of the galaxy, the center of the galaxy, you know, since it's supposed to look like the Hamburger Galaxy. Again, I'm very excited to see about this one because I've never been able to take a picture of the southern hemisphere target. This is more of a northern hemisphere target, again located in Ursa Major, if you guys are actually interested in trying out the target, which I do definitely recommend. You guys should try it out yourself with this specific camera. The link again is in the description below, because I'd like to see the difference between if you were to have a higher focal length telescope versus this shorter focal length telescope, you know, kind of restricted amount of aperture. Hopefully I can get a different telescope in the future, one with a little bit of a wider aperture, longer focal length, like the SV Bony 503-102 millimeter. I would definitely be interested in trying that one out. So again, I'm going to let this run until about 6 something in the morning, and I will take it inside for post-processing. All right, as you can see, we are now inside. I have these 3 different deep sky objects all in their folders with the bias files and the flats files, along with all the lights files. The Whirlpool Galaxy is probably the only one that I spent about 8 hours worth of exposure time on. M106 and what I'm labeling as a ham galaxy because it doesn't have a name. I ended up shooting both on the same night. And I also sorted through each individual file to make sure there was no weird streaks in it due to airplanes or satellites or things of that sort that would end up getting stacked into the stacked file, which would be harder to edit out later on. If you scroll through here, you can kind of see what I was talking about with the high altitude clouds. You can see it kind of a weird haze moving across the image, a weird gradient, but that I can work with that, especially in PixInsight with the new gradient correction tool. But if you scroll through all the files, you won't see any airplanes because I went through one by one to make sure I didn't have any included in there. So the reason I'm starting to use the Deep Sky Stacker program is because, let me just close out of this real quick and reopen it. It's because I can use the drizzle function within the stacking process in order to bring out more detail that would generally be lost if I were to use it in a program such as Cyril, because it doesn't actually take apart the pixels, it just puts everything together. And the way that we would do this, just to give you a brief rundown on how to actually get that done, you open the light files by doing open picture files, and I'm going to first start with M106. So you go to M106, open up your lights, and just select all of these, hit open, and it will automatically load that into the light frame directory. Then if you have darks, you can do the same with darks. Flats, you want to do the same with flats. I have the same flats for the Whirlpool Galaxy as I have for every other galaxy, so I'm just going to hit open on there. And offset bias files, I'm just going to select all my bias files and hit open on here. And it's going to put each file in its own directory, so you don't have to worry about sorting it yourself. Next, you want to check your stacking settings. You go to Stack Checked Pictures, Stacking Settings, and as you can see, I have the Enable 3x Drizzle. Maybe you have a mosaic type image, you want to switch to mosaic mode, even intersection mode, but I'm going to have it on standard mode, just because I want to get it centered on that one object, despite the fact that it does a drizzle and all the stars are kind of moving around just to get rid of the extra walking noise. I'm going to have that in standard mode. Enable 3x drizzle in order to get the maximum amount of detail possible. I do want to mention as well, though, if you do decide to use the drizzle function in Deep Sky Stacker, that will also, because you're splitting apart these pixels, it will also increase extra noise. So I would definitely recommend that you use dark frames if you're planning on doing a drizzle. But you don't necessarily have to. It's just something I would recommend. And to get started, you just hit the OK button and allow it to start registering each file, and it'll take about 2 minutes to register and stack your file. Alright, so after your stacked file is finished stacking, it will automatically load in bit by bit like this. It generally saves as an autosave.tiff file. I've tried to change that to fits, and I do believe I did change it to fits at one point, but I guess it ended up changing back at a certain amount of time. But what you want to do if you plan on processing in a program like PixInsight or Cyril, I would recommend that you go to the Save Picture to File function, type in the name of that file, M106, and save it as a fits image 32-bit integer and hit save. And you can save that in pretty much any directory you'd like. I'm going to save it to desktop at M106 Galaxy and hit save, and it will automatically save it as a fits file. And now is where you have to make the magic happen yourself. So let's close out of Deep Sky Stacker, hit no here, and we're going to open this up in the PixInsight program. And I'm going to give you a rundown on how to use this program to process your galaxy image. Of course, I'm going to try to go through a little bit slower than I generally have gone, as I've gotten certain, I guess you could say, recommendations to make my videos somewhat slower just so that it's easier to follow along. So I'm going to try to talk a little bit slower than usual and make the processes go a little bit slower than usual as well, just so that you guys can follow along a little bit easier. And it's a very simple workflow. It's one that I pretty much use on all of my galaxy images, and it generally works pretty well. So I'm just going to let PixInsight fully open. And as you can see, it already opened the image here. I'm going to upload my workspace in here as well. Just go ahead and drag and drop that in here, and I should be good to go. So the first step is you want to go to your screen transfer function. Again, you can find that in the Process Explorer. If you type in screen, you'll see it pop up as screen transfer function. And we're just going to do a quick auto stretch on that. You want to unlink your image and hit the radiation looking button, and it'll automatically auto stretch this image. Now, this is just a temporary stretch. This is not what the image is going to look like finalized. But I will have to say that even just with this simple auto stretch, the amount of detail that we were able to pull out with just about an hour and a half amount of exposure of M106 and its surrounding galaxies is, I'm quite impressed with what the 705C camera was able to pull out. I was expecting to see a lot more readout noise given the fact that it isn't a cooled camera. But despite all of that, we do have a fairly clean image, and I'm sure that the finalized image itself will be even cleaner and much smoother, and just absolutely beautiful image. So for the price point that the Sv705C is at, I would definitely say it's a good match for if you're trying to use it for both planetary and for deep sky astrophotography, like things on things like galaxies. So let's get started with this. The next step is the dynamic crop. And again, you can find that if you just type that into the Process Explorer, dynamic, and you'll see it right here, dynamic crop. Then you close out here. All right. And it's pretty simple. You just go ahead and zoom out here and kind of drag the corners in to center your image around the galaxy that you want to work with. And you can kind of just play around with the size as well, just to see whatever works for you best. And once you're happy, you just go ahead and hit the check button, and it will automatically finish the crop. So you can zoom back in here, and we're going to do our dynamic background extraction. Now, there's several things that you can do. You can either click on the different points that don't have stars, just like I'm doing here. Generally, I would recommend that you do a good amount. You'll know if the little points that you set are valid, if they're not marked as red and just turn gray. You want to, again, as I said, avoid any kind of stars or any galaxies that could end up messing up the dynamic background extraction. So select all these different points, and once you're happy with your selection, you can move to the next step. So the next step you're going to do is open down the target image correction, and you're going to put it as subtraction. I'm going to leave all these different things the same. And as you can see, there's kind of a nasty gradient, so this might get rid of that a little bit. But let's check that out. Hit the check button here, and once it's done running, it should open up this new file. So to see if it works, just go ahead and close your dynamic background extraction, and you're going to go back to your screen transfer function and auto stretch it again. All right, as you can see, the auto stretch is complete. There's not too much of a difference, but it did help a little bit. So our next step to get rid of that green noise is we're going to make a preview. And to make a preview, just press this little button up here. We're going to zoom in to, again, an area that has no stars. We're going to select that and use that as a target reference image, and click on the preview one, hit OK here, zoom back out, and hit the square button. And what this is going to do is it's going to kind of get rid of some of the green in our image, so you can close out of that. And to get rid of even more of that green and to properly calibrate the image, I don't recommend that you use photometric color calibration on galaxies because it does get rid of the natural coloration. Of course, the choice is up to you if you want to do that or not. So what we're going to do is a manual color calibration. So first off, for the white reference, you're going to want to make another preview. So click here, zoom in onto your galaxy, just like this. Select probably the core of the galaxy should be good, just like that. You're going to select this preview 2, hit OK here. Zoom back out. You're going to select the previous background reference, which was preview 1, hit OK. And you can leave all the other settings the same and press the square button for the automatic color calibration. Once that's complete, you go ahead and do another auto stretch on that. As you can see, it properly stretched again. And to get rid of the rest of the green noise, we just do the SCNR function. Again, you can find that in the Process Explorer. Just type in SCNR, and it will show up right there. So you pretty much leave all the settings the same here and press the square button, and you'll notice it got rid of pretty much the rest of the green noise that we have in there. Now, I do want to get rid of some of that gradient. So to do that, I go to the Process Explorer. You scroll down to Gradient Correction, open up Gradient Correction. You can leave all the settings pretty much the same. Just go ahead and press the square button and it should automatically do it. As you can see, it made a huge difference in the gradient. Let me just show you. You go back here and that looks really bad. But once you go back forward with this automatic gradient correction, everything looks much more natural and it's a very much more clean looking image. So what I always like to do now, I don't generally prefer to use StarNet in the PixInsight program. So what I always do is I just file, save as M106 galaxy dbe.fit, leave all the settings the same, hit OK. You're going to minimize this and you're going to open the M106 file in Serial. So it's definitely convenient if you have Serial and PixInsight installed. The reason I like to use Serial is because I like using it for the StarNet star removal. So open up star processing, StarNet star removal. You're going to do the pre-stretched linear image. If you don't do that, StarNet will not work properly. And then you hit execute. And that's all you have to do. Now you just wait for that to finish. It should just take a couple minutes. Alright, as you can see, StarNet is now complete, and just to check that, we're going to do an auto stretch on here. And as you can see, there are no stars at all in this image, so that is perfect. There's a lot of galaxies here, more than I honestly expected to see. So I'm just going to close out of Serial again, hit exit here. We'll come back to that in just a moment. So for now, we're going to be using the starlist file in PixInsight. So open that up. And this is where we begin to have some fun. So the next step that we have to do is the arcsyn stretch here in PixInsight. So delete all of this here and type in arc, and you'll see arcsyn stretch. You want to open that up. You're going to create a preview. And using this preview, we're going to do a stretch on this galaxy. So go ahead and bump this up. And it's sort of a step-by-step process on how to do this. You want to bump it up a little bit, bring up the black noise. Obviously, you don't want to clip everything to 0. If you highlight this, this shows what it is clipped to 0. So I generally wouldn't recommend bumping up the black point too much. So kind of stretch it as need be. I would say just like this at first. Go ahead and press the square button here. You can stretch it some more. Then you can start bringing up the black point. Obviously, you don't want to bring it in too much, so we're going to lower down the stretch factor here. And just like that, we're going to press the square button. Lower down the stretch factor even more. And let's bring up that black point a tiny bit more. There we go. Hit the square button here. And hit close. So that is the completed arcsyn stretch. You zoom in here, you can see all the galaxies nice and clearly. Of course, you can see a lot of the noise here, and there is one way to get rid of that in PixInsight, but sometimes it does overdo it and it does take a long time. If you do decide to use it, again, it's up to you. You go to Script, Easy Processing Suite, and Easy Denoise, and this generally does a very good job, but it can take up to 10 minutes just to complete doing the denoise on one image. So, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and use it. I'm going to click on Run Easy Denoise. You just pretty much want to leave all the settings the same, but you can play it around, test it if you'd like. I'm personally just going to press Run Easy Denoise and allow that to finish. Alright, so the denoise is finally done. That took almost half an hour to complete, which is one of the reasons I generally prefer not to do it, but it did make all the difference. Most of the noise that was in the image previously is now gone. So now we can work with it more freely without having to worry about the noise becoming too prominent, I guess you could say. And we can still see a lot of the details of the galaxy despite the fact that we did that noise reduction. So the next step to our process is we're going to create a range mask. So to do that, you open up range selection. Again, you can find that in the Process Explorer if you type in range selection. we're going to open up this preview here, and we're going to bump this up just enough so that we can see the galaxy here. We're going to bump up the fuzziness as well to only have the core of the galaxy, the brightest parts of the galaxy selected, and we're going to press a square here to create the mask. So now let's close this preview, close the range selection, and we're just going to drag and drop this mask onto this image here. And don't close it, just go ahead and minimize it and drag it over to the side. And now we will open up our curves transformation. Now, to find that again, you go to your Process Explorer and type in curves transformation. You're going to create a preview of this, and we're going to just bump up the saturation here. So press saturation and start dragging it up. Now, obviously, you want it to look more natural, so you can kind of play around with it, right? You can bring in the red a bit more than anything if you'd like. Kind of lower down the green, or raise it up to make it more of an even color, and leave the blue kind of behind so that it doesn't look as much of a dramatic difference here. So I'm pretty happy with how this looks in regards to color. So I'm just going to close that. Close that there, and now I'm just going to get rid of the preview. Take this mask off, just like this. You go to mask, remove mask. And now I'm just going to do a histogram transformation on this to kind of darken the background just a tiny bit more if I can. Just to do this, I'm going to open up a preview, bring up the black point a bit more. Make sure I keep that galaxy there. Or I did notice that it does kind of bring out the background noise a bit too much, so I'm just going to leave it how it is and do it just like that. Now let me just close out of this. Go to File. We're going to save this as it is, and then we're going to bring the stars back into our image using the serial program. So minimize this now. You have the Starless M106. We're going to open that up in serial. First off, I'm going to open up also the star mask here. Hit open. And you'll notice some of the stars do have this kind of ugly blue chromation around it. And one thing that can help sometimes if you do a full resynthesis of the stars. So go ahead and click there. And the star synthesis is complete. So go ahead and auto stretch to see what it did here. And that looks a lot neater than it did before. Just to show you, you can undo it and redo it. And it looks a whole lot cleaner. So go ahead and put it in linear mode, save it. And now let's put the stars back into the image. So go to star processing, star recomposition, open the background stretch parameters, and we're just going to bring in our M106 Galaxy Starless. Hit open here. And now let's bring in our star mask. All right, our star mask is right here. Hit open on that. And let's bring the stars in a little bit. You can play around with the stretch factor a little bit here. Obviously, you don't want to bloat the stars. You don't want to make the stars look unnatural. But you do want the stars to be there. So we're just going to continue bumping this up until we're happy with how the stars are looking in the image. Alrighty, just a little bit more and I should be happy with what we have. Alright, that's a good amount of stars here in the image. So I'm going to hit apply here, and I'm going to close that, and I'm pretty happy with how this image came out. One thing I wish I could have done was kind of gotten rid of that background color. Maybe I can still do that if you go to the color calibration. Sometimes this works, sometimes it doesn't. Just select this area, use current selection, and neutralize the background here. And it did, in fact, work quite well. So it kind of maintained the proper natural coloration of the galaxy itself while getting rid of that weird looking blue background. So now we can save this as a unique file, just like that. Let's say it as a PNG file, and let's just check to make sure it's saved in the proper quality. Sometimes it does not, and you can just check that by zooming in, and yes, it did. So Number one, this galaxy is looking amazing, definitely for a planetary camera and only about an hour of exposure time. The amount of galaxies that we can see in this image, how clean it looks so far. I wasn't really expecting this kind of detail. I wasn't expecting this little amount of noise, but it seems like the Sv705 Sv705C was able to pull out everything very, very nicely, with not too much work being put into post-processing either. So I'm going to do post-processing on the Whirlpool Galaxy and what I called the Ham Galaxy, and I will take you guys to the part where that's all finished. You've already seen the run-through of how this is done. Let me just take you to the results. All right, so it is now the next day. I ended up accidentally falling asleep on the laptop because it did take a while to actually get all of this done. But processing is now complete, and I'm really excited to show you the results of what the Sv705C was able to pull out when paired with the 70 ED telescope. So the first one we're going to take a look at was what I was calling the Ham Galaxy. Now, I didn't get as much exposure time on this one as I would have liked to, due to the fact that also there was a moon. You can kind of see this ring somewhat going up from the reflection of the moonlight onto the lens. I couldn't really get rid of that in post-processing. But this galaxy is one that is fairly difficult to image. It's not a very bright one. It's very small. Definitely one that I would say is kind of out of the limit of the focal length that I have with the telescope that I'm using. But even with the telescope that I'm using, this camera was able to pull out these smaller galaxies that are here. You can see there's 3 of them there. I'm calling it, again, the Ham Galaxy and its partner galaxy. There's a lot of galaxies here in this image if you actually go ahead and look for it. I'm going to have the data to this image actually in the description of this video. I'm going to have the data to all 3 of these different galaxies for if you guys want to try to process it yourself. It's going to be available for a limited time. I'm not going to be able to have it on there all the time, but hopefully you guys can make some work on it. Now, if you do decide to use the data and you decide to post any of these images, if you could tag me in the image just at Astrophotography on Facebook or on Instagram, it would help me grow the channel as well and help me to get more viewers. So I would really appreciate if you would do that, just so everybody else can see some of the content that I've been creating. So here's the Hamburger Galaxy. I wish I could have gotten more exposure time on it. I wish I had a telescope with a higher focal length that could have a higher zoom on it to get more detail pulled out of it. But given the fact that it was a moonlit night, there were high altitude clouds, I think it's pretty good what the camera was able to pull out on these particular galaxies. Now we move to, not that one, that's a different galaxy. We move to M106, also taken with the same camera. Again, this was only about an hour of exposure, and it was able to pull out a lot of different galaxies. You see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and there's actually was more in the original image. I ended up kind of post-processing them out, trying to get the background a little bit darker because given the fact that, again, it was a moonlit night and I only got about an hour exposure, it was kind of hard to not clip the extra data that I had in this image, just to try to keep the detail in the galaxy and make it still be able to pop out. So again, I am quite impressed with what it was able to pull out. It does have a slight bluish tint, but there's no hot pixels, there's no weird readout noise that came from the sensor. So again, for the fact that it was an uncooled camera, it was able to pull out a lot of detail without having a lot of additional artifacts in the image. And last but not least, we have the Whirlpool Galaxy. I was able to get about 8 hours of exposure time on this one. I did miss accidentally letting this airplane go through. I didn't get to edit that out, but I'm still very happy with how this image came out. A lot of detail here in this image. Again, if I were to have a higher focal length telescope than the 70 ED, then I would imagine that this particular image would be absolutely incredible. So I'm really looking forward to working with the 705C a lot more in the future. It's a much cheaper camera given the fact that it was made for planetary, but this kind of goes to show that you can use it if you would want to on deep sky objects like galaxies, and I'm hoping to try it out on nebula in the future. So if you guys are interested in seeing that, please let me know in the comments as well. If you're interested in purchasing this particular camera, again, it's about $340 at the moment. and also SV is having a sale going on right now because of their anniversary. So make sure that you get it soon because it is a limited time that it is going to be on discount. So again, I'm going to have the link to the description and below to the SV website. Again, let me know what you guys think about this camera in the comments below. Please leave a like and subscribe to help me grow the channel, and I hope you guys all have a great day and clear skies tonight.